at their house. It's the far end of Sand Beach would be off to your right, off here. This is Gore Mountain on the right and Otter Cliffs in the distance. And I was really lucky in that I had seen a photo credit to a garden, one of Beatrix Farron's gardens, and it was the Satterley Garden. It's and it said courtesy of the Van Heerden family. And so I asked Christian, who's on the Wild Gardens of Acadia committee with me, if he had any other pictures. And he told me he'd poke around and see what he could find. And then we had a meeting one day and he arrives with this shopping bag, and in it is this absolutely marvelous scrapbook of pictures of that they, in 1917, the Satterleys hired a photographer who was quite good. And he took a number of pictures. So the picture of looking at the Beehive from Sand Beach with the stream there, this picture, the one of the tea house, all of those were taken from there. And Christian very nicely said, "Oh, use whatever you want, take it as long as you need." So it was really, I was very, very fortunate. So in 1914, there was an attempt by some people in Bar Harbor to revoke the tax exempt status of the Hancock County Trustees of Public Reservation. And it was stymied because, again, Dorr was told about this. So he takes a night train to Augusta. His good friend is the Speaker of the House at the time. He stays with him. He's introduced to all these other people. The two of them talked to all these representatives. So in the morning, there was nobody opposed to this, including the representative from Bar Harbor, who said he only introduced it at the request of his constituents. So Dorr realized that if you're going to make this land more attractive to the federal government, one thing you could do would be to develop memorial paths around Cerdamont Springs. So Cerdamont Springs is going to be the focus initially of where you brought people in. And Mrs. Kane gave this path in honor of her husband who had died. And this is Mrs. Kane in black and her assistant, Mrs. Bridgham, in white. And so their husbands and they gave a substantial part of Dorr Mountain to the Hancock County Trustees of Public Reservation. And the two sisters gave Lakewood and all the land around Lakewood to them. So again, they were just acquiring this land. And Beatrix Farron had built a bridge in honor of these two women. But the bridge, once the beavers came, the water levels rose and the bridges. It's still there apparently, but it's very decrepit looking, and there's no good photograph of it. I mean, if Mrs. Omens wasn't that great a photograph, the one I saw of the bridge was really bad. So anyway, and this is another memorial path. This is the Dietrich Pass, and this is Elsa Dietrich. When Elsa was 11, her mother died, and she and her father left London and moved to Washington, D.C. to her aunt, Mrs. Enid Hunt Slater. And then Mrs. Slater had a summer cottage in Bar Harbor, so they came here for the summer. So they rotated between the two parts. And Kurt Dietrich died from something from the anesthesia he was getting in some surgery in 1913. But Mrs. Slater gave the path in his honor. And on the sixth step of this path, his name is called the Kurt Dietrich Path, which is quite nicely seen. And I grew up in Providence, and the Slater Mills were very well known there. And this is where Mrs. Hunt Slater's money came from. I noticed, I was in Providence a couple of weeks ago, and we were going out of town. I saw the sign, Slater Historic Site. So they even had one as you go from Providence into Pawtucket and then cross the state line. But this is Elsa Dietrich. This photo is used a lot, but even though I had tried to find photos that weren't used, I really like this and decided to go ahead and use it. This is another memorial path. This is the Homans Path. It was built in honor of Mrs. Homans. and Dorr built it. And this path is characterized by these nice stone steps and these lintels. That's the arch that goes across to give it. And Sheridan Steele took this picture for me. This is the Beechcroft path. This is in honor of C. Morton Smith. His wife donated the path, and it's characterized by a lot of flat stones. And George Dorr credited there's a man by the name of Andrew Liscombe, who did a lot laying out the paths for the Bar Harbor Village Improvement Association and worked with Dorr on these. And they were interested in flat steps to help give you better footing as you progress and getting nice overlooks. In the trailer, you also saw the Emery path that you had a couple on the side of a mountain overlooking out to the Great Meadow and beyond. And that was given by Mrs. Anson in memory of her first husband, John Emery. John Emery is the one who built the turrets. It was a wedding present to his bride. It's now COAs, but. And this is the Jessup path. Dorr was really concerned about ensuring that people could come from the towns into the park from various places. And it was sort of a goal of the Village Improvement Association's Village Improvement Society in Seal Harbor and Northeast. And you have a number of paths that go in various places. And it's the same principle. But this is the Jessup path. And this is Ashley Conte's photo. She's with Friends of Acadia. And, you know, I've been here for almost 50 years, and this path looks the same to me now as it did then. So in any case, this path was named in honor of Morris and Maria DeWitt Jessup, Baird's family. He helped with Morris Jessup financed one of the Arctic expeditions of Perry, and Mrs. Jessup gave the Jessup Library in Bar Harbor and an endowment for it. So, and it's a path that starts right near Kibo Street, Houghton Farm Road, and goes down all the way to the Tarn as you've been there. So it's quite a long path, and it's a very focal point in the park. One of the things in this is, I call this a diagrammatic view, but I was very fortunate in that the park had a collection of Leo Grossman's photos. He was the engineer on the Cadillac Mountain Road. He happened to be a really good photographer. And he took a number of these, but in trying to lay out how the road would be, they made these diagrams on pictures of it. And there are a number of them, and this is just one. The road was 90% of the road was blasted. It was really very, very, as you can see, all the rock everywhere. They used some of the big pieces of rock as guardrails. Ultimately, the contract was given to a man by the name of McCabe from Boston, a construction company. And on this section of the project, according to Grossman, he barely broke even. The other thing about Grossman, he wrote very effective reports periodically. And in the cultural landscape study of the motor road system, the writers comment on the fact that as you moved on from, let's say, 1930, 1940, when Grossman left, the reports were much duller. They weren't that interesting, and there was a flatness to them that Grossman seemed to overcome. This is Dan Noonan. He is the dynamite man. And in order to, I said they had to blast 90% of the road, so you had to have dynamite to do that. And he had 30 years experience in dynamiting. But he was with a crew, and when they put the third stick of dynamite into this drill hole, he was injured and he actually died the following day. But it was very difficult. Both McCabe and the Bureau of Public Works kept public roads kept blacksmiths there to keep those drill bits really sharp and clear. So this is Mr. Doolittle. This is another picture of, you can see all the rock of one of McCabe's steam shovels, putting in a dump truck and removing it. Once the road was built, there was a landscape architect from the National Park Service who came to look at the road, and he was very disturbed that there was still small pieces of rock on both sides of the road, that he didn't feel the contractor had done a good enough job cleaning it up. And he was very upset about that. So eventually it was cleaned up before they opened the road. The road opened, it was dedicated in 32, but in 31, in October, something like 800 people went up the first day that it was open. It hadn't been dedicated, but and the dedication had been postponed simply because people couldn't make it and things, the timing, it wasn't working. People say, oh, well, it'll be done X day. And of course, X day comes and it's not done. So, so you have the goal of Dorr and Rockefeller and Stephen and Mather and Anno Cameron, both of them are National Park Service directors, to make these places accessible. And you're looking at the far side of, this is in the late 1890s, but the far side, you're looking at that tree area of Great Head, the sand beach. And if you recall, there was a nice photo of Mr. and Mrs. Satterley on the lawn. It looks like a really nice lawn looking out. So it had not been cleared at this point. But the town of Bar Harbor built in the late 1800s, built a road from paralleling Ocean Drive. In the late 1700s, they built a road that went from Cromwell Harbor, right across from the athletic field in Bar Harbor, down to Schooner Head and into Sand Beach. And it's not the loop road itself, but it's the road. If you go down before you get to I don't know how you come in, but if you come in Schooner Head Road, you'd go straight down and that road eventually would lead to Sand Beach, but it's not passable at the far end anymore. But people love to go out, summer residents and regular visitors and so on, and residents. And so you had roads. And when they were building these roads, they used old logging roads and footpaths to expand them and to make them accessible and manageable. This is a very old picture, but it's the road near Sand Beach with the Beehive Mountain in the background. And this is that same Ocean Drive, and you can see how fragile everything looks and greeny. This is another shot of it. There are now telephone pole lines there. Now there's an ocean path, and you can see that the road looks more developed. And in the late 1870s, Clara Martin, there's some tour guides, and one of them was of Mount Desert Island, and she is the first one to actually talk about the ocean path. And this is it here, but I rather think it's a later version of it, because if you go back, you can't really see that there's any ocean path here. But apparently, according to her guidebook, and someone at the Jessup Library, the archivist got the book out and brought me up the map I wear gloves, but so it did exist, but it's hard to see. But here you can, but the road looks much more developed. So I think it's a later piece. This is the Lower Mountain Road. It says Cadillac Mountain Road, but that's not right. There's Jordan Pond there on the left. You can see the South Bubble. And this is the first segment of the loop road that was built. It was built from Eagle Lake Road down towards first of the entrance with Cadillac, and the phase 1 and phase 2, it was extended then from that entrance where Cadillac is down to the Jordan Pond House. And this is considered to be a very important road in terms of getting access to people in the park and giving people access to the park. And also Dorr really thought it was good because now the rangers could go from the north end of the park to the south end on a single road. And one of the things that I found interesting and is really, I think, worth noting is that They started building this road in 1924 or so. And the last part of that road was not finished until 1953. And we think of that loop road as a road. You get on it and it just goes around, but it was built in segments and those segments did not connect. I mean, eventually, yes, they connected, but originally they did not connect. So this, it wasn't, I think I know where the Eagle Lake Road stop probably was. So the opposite Clefstone Road, you can see what looks like an old road bed, but I'm not sure. So this is a crew that built that first segment. It was taken about a quarter of a mile north of Bubble Pond. And this was in the Bangor Daily. It belongs to the Bar Harbor Historical Society, but there's a large group of people that worked on that road. And then John D. Rockefeller Jr., one of the things that I found particularly enlightening in terms of this book is while I was well aware that Rockefeller built the carriage roads and had donated land, et cetera, I hadn't really been aware of the care he took in overseeing the development of parcels, of projects, of implementing them by paying for them, by getting the money. And he played, in my mind, a much bigger role than I had ever imagined. And he deeded everything to the government. I mean, he said that he would build the carriage roads and he would maintain them until he died, which was in 1960. He did. And then they went to the government. They were, the governments. And as you recall, the government didn't have the money to keep the roads in good shape. And so you had that carriage road restoration project in the late 1980s. And but these are all of his roads. And he brought in experts. So this is the Stanley Brook Road. And he hired the Olmsted Center to be sure that the Stanley Brook Road fit the narrow, the whole object of the bridge, fit the road itself. And Olmsted worked to bring to really frame the view as you came out coming down from roughly Jordan Pond down to the end of the road across from the Seal Harbor Beach, to really frame that as a photo. And when they were doing the carriage road studies, a man by the name of Riley from the University of Virginia did this cultural landscape study. He had lots of correspondence from Rockefeller to the Simpsons, mostly the engineers for this project. And he was always telling them, and he noted this particular bridge at one point to tell the masons not to make it look so perfect. It's rustic. It needs to be rough looking, not very perfect. And he had a number of letters on that. And you can see if you come up from it from not Sand Beach, Seal Harbor Beach, you can see on the right, you can see a difference if you look. We have to look for it. So this is the overlook at Otter Cliffs. And this is another thing that Rockefeller did. Until the 1980s, the road was one way. And he wanted to be sure that people coming in either direction would have a view of the ocean and the offshore islands, and that walkers would be accommodated. So he hired the Olmsted's firm to come up with this grade separation and develop the project. And so here you have it again. You can see the upper side and then the lower side, and off to the right is the walkway. This is the Paradise Hill Road. This is one of the latest parts of the road. The road was surveyed and begun in the early 1940s. And Rockefeller had been trying to move things, push things ahead, get contracts awarded and so on, before the United States became too involved in the World War II. So it was done, completed by early 1942. But the road went from Eagle Lake Road to the edge of Duck Brook, and from Hell's Cove, roughly where the visitor center is, to Duck Brook. But there was no bridge. And that bridge was not done until 53. So you had this nice road, but you couldn't really use it. But again, he bought the land, he paid for the studies. Rockefeller also used his political influence to try and move these contracts before we really became too involved in World War II. This is the bridge that was finally constructed. At the time of its construction, it was the longest bridge on the East Coast and certainly the longest bridge in the park. And you can see that the thing, this triple arch, he liked triple arches. He also built, this is another bridge that he built. This is the Carriage Road Bridge at Duck Brook. As you go onto the Duck Brook Road, if you come in either from Eagle Lake Road or come up and walk from West Street Extension over. Again, this is triple arch and it parallels that book. At one time, before all the vegetation grew up, you could actually see the two bridges from the Loop Road, but you can't, or from Route 3 rather, but you can't anymore. I mean, I even tried having somebody drive me in winter when there are no leaves in the trees and say, no, you have to go slowly. I can see it, but it's not there. Anyway, this is considered to be the most sophisticated bridge in the Carriage Road Bridge in the park system. And this is the finished bridge going over the Duck Brook. It's on the Loop Road. In the distance is the Atlantic, so you've got that whole flow. So you have these bridges. You have the Park Loop Road, et cetera, but you've got to get the road over. This is Route 233 that we're looking at. This is the bridge that's about 1/10 of a mile just past the entrance of Cadillac Mountain Road entrance to the park. And in order to build this, he had to get the permission of the town of Bar Harbor because it was on town land. And then there were 3 bridges involved. This one, the bridge over the New Eagle Lake Road, which is now called the Duck Brook Road. At one point, it was the New Mill Meadow Road. So it's gone through a lot of iterations. But anyway, the McQuins had the contract to build these 3 bridges as well. This is another shot of it being built. And it was impressive, the work they did. This is the McQuinn Yacht in Hulls Cove. And I had seen a picture in the Friends of Acadia journal of a separation, will come up shortly, the separation of the arches on the Duck Brook Road, the Duck Brook Bridge rather. And I called Paul McQuinn. Paul is between my 2 oldest children in age, and they were the 3 of them were on the swim team. And so I remember this young man. And I called and asked him if he had any pictures of this project. And he said, yeah, he'd drop a flash drive by. So he did. I printed out some pictures I thought were interesting, and Paul came by and he said, well, they're not in the right order. So I said, well, would you mind putting them in the right order? He put them in the right order. And then he walked me through the process so that I could write about it. Because, I know absolutely nothing, literally nothing about bridges. But when Rockefeller built that the bridge, this is the bridge that crosses Eagle Lake Road, goes over it. It's right. You've got, if you're coming towards 198, you've got Eagle Lake on this side, and you've got that parking area and wetlands over on the north side, and then the road going out, the Carriage Road goes out to the Witch Hole Loop from that angle, and this one goes out to the loop around Eagle Lake Road or on Betty's Pond. But when they began stripping the barrel, that's the core of the bridge, the soil off that, and there's a good picture of that in the book. Somehow I didn't include it. But anyway, Harold McQuinn thought it would be possible, rather than take the arches down stone by stone, that they could be moved. And so he wanted to try out to see if that would work. And he set up these ball bearing things. He would bear the weight of the arch, and he tested it out in the Hulls Cove yard, and it worked. And so that was what he wanted to do. So this is the bridge. In the foreground there is that's a part of Eagle Lake Carriage Road that goes around the lake itself. And this is the section here. You can see how they're trying to separate the arch. They're using a vibrating hammer to get the arch separated. And the reason that the bridge had to be widened is that it's a major road, east-west road from the east side of the island to the west side. And also the town had asked Rockefeller to extend it by 7 feet, and it would have cost $4,000 more, and he said no. And it's interesting, but he said, and I'm sure that if they were the ones paying for it, they would have the same response. So the highway department and the Park Service came up with this thing, and McQuinn decided that these arches could be separated, and he was actually right. You can see how they're there. There's also, they used this blowtorch to get in to separate it out. And here they're separated. So you've got on the right, you have the core of the bridge, what they call the barrel of the bridge, and on the left, you have the north arch. And they were going to move it. The park documents say it was moved 12 feet, but Paul claims that it was moved 13 feet. He acknowledges that they said 12 feet, but it got moved 13 feet, and don't ask why. That was his comment to me. That's what happened. But to move it, they had men on either side of the arch. And they remember they moved it 13 feet total. They had men on either side of the arch. And when the foreman blew the whistle, they would take 3 steps to the north and stop. It took them 3 days to move 13 feet, but they did it. And you cannot really see when I went down, I don't live very far from here, that particular spot in Acadia, and I go to Duck Brook a lot, and I kept thinking, why didn't I notice the difference? And when I went and looked, there is a slight difference in variation in color, but you have to really look for it. So it's not all there. So it was really remarkable. And the government recognized this. The Federal Highway Administration gave, this is in the photo on the right, Harold McQuinn is on the right, accepting this award from the Federal Highway Administration for the environmental and historic treatment of this bridge. And the associated contractors also gave the McQuinns an award, and Ron McQuinn, who's in the bottom photo on the right, he succeeded his father as president of the company, and he also oversaw the project of moving the Eagle Lake Bridge. And he accepted that award, and his son, Paul, is to his left. When Ron died in 2009, Paul became the president of the. So they did really a wonderful thing. And as you know, Keith Johnston, who is chief of facilities management, said that he had 3 generations of the McQuinn family just giving this wonderful resource, historic and environmental integrity to the work they did on the carriage road. They worked on the carriage road, sections of the loop road, the bridges. So they're very instrumental, and we owe a great deal to them. So this is an early picture of 4 of the ranges. You can see that they don't look quite the same as we remember them now, but the hats are pretty much the same, but they don't wear these boots, and they don't look quite so militaristic, I would say. This picture was taken down by what is now a parking lot in front of the Y, but was the original visitor center, or headquarters rather, for the I guess visitor center as well, for Acadia. It was on the corner of Park and Main Street, and then it got moved to College of the Atlantic, where it became incorporated into the Door Museum. So the center part of that building is what was originally there, and then they added onto it. And I remember when it was moved, because of the height, they would have to take down all these wires. And so Miller Doherty, who was head of public safety and maintenance at College of the Atlantic, got permission from the park to bring it through the park, because there are no wires. And it wasn't until they came down from the Loop Road down to where West Street and Clefstone Road, Bloomfield Road intersect, that they had to worry about the wires. But it's probably only about a half mile of getting wires down, but it was a major, major accomplishment. Anyway, this is an early picture of Thunder Hole. And there is an even earlier picture in the book in which there isn't any barrier up, but you can see they were a lot more casual about how close you could get to these waves. They didn't seem to be too concerned. And the other thing that you notice in some of the pictures is that most of the women were wearing dress shoes, so you could fall easily. And anyway, so this man behind the ranger is Anne Kozak. He turned out to be the third director of the Park Service. He was the assistant to Stephen Mather, the first director. And he did a lot to promote the idea of building a road up Cadillac and making sure that it was historically and environmentally integral. And he, in his biography on the Parks website, lists at the end, listing his accomplishments, and they said his contributions to the Park Service were legion. But one of the reasons that he advocated for getting that road up Cadillac is so that people who couldn't physically climb it would be able to see all the views. And so it was that, sense there. This is the view of, in the far upper part of the photo is Morrell Park. It's now, it was they had horse shows there. It was owned by Edwin Morrell from Philadelphia. It's now part of the Jackson Lab, and it's fittingly called Morrell Park, but it's a building. Anyway, and this ranger is showing people that, and he is right above this park. It's he's in what is now the Bear Brook picnic area, but it was a campground at that time. But if you go up that ledge, it's what you're looking down to see. And this is the photo of the early staff at Acadia. So your George George's obviously there in his top coat and hat, and the man to his left is what's his name? He was the second director. I can't think of his name, but anyway, he grew up in Bar Harbor, and after he retired from the service, he became Ben Hadley. His name was. Okay, so this is an late 1800s photo of people on the rocks by Otter Cliffs. You can see those rocks there. And remember, they had built that road going down to Otter Cliffs, the town had. So you had people there enjoying it. And then people then and now like to go out to the islands for a picnic or an overnight. And this is the Burnt Porcupine Island. You can see the how they're dressed up. They hardly look like they're picnicking on an island. And they're very, they could get out carefully. They step on a plank. They came in on the yacht. And this is, this lady's going in her hat, and she's all dressed up. And this lady is as well. She could be having tea. This is Sergeant Mountain Pond. It is one of two glacial cirques in Acadia. The other is the bowl, and the bowl was given to the park by Mrs. Homans. Early cores from this lake or pond cirque believe that it suggests that it could have been one of the first lakes in Maine. And these women walking on the paths and all dressed up. And there's some, the book refers to this woman as Mrs. Price, the older woman. And that's how the park identifies her. But there's somebody who's really quite good at local history, Therese Miller, and she calls her Flora Pineo Rodick. And I'm trying to figure out which name is actually correct. But I don't know. I saw the same picture in an exhibit that Therese was putting together for the Historical Society, and I looked at it and I said, "Oh." So I haven't been able to touch base yet with Therese, but or with Becky Colwell, the cultural chief at Acadia, but we will get to it and figure it out. This is rock climbing up the South Bubble, and the interesting thing about this isn't taken in the late 30s, is that these ropes, these beeline ropes, were around their waist. They weren't attached with a hook to a harness, but literally tied around their waist. So they get pulled up the amount up. I don't know, it sounds gruesome to me. I like this photo. It's called a stroller, but to me it looks more like a sled. And obviously it's wide enough for a child and the dog. You skating across Eagle Lake. This is a man by the name of Frank Ray skate sailing. If you wanted to switch directions, you move the sail to your other shoulder and the wind would blow you down. This is a picture of George Dorr and Stephen Mather on Champlain. And there are plaques in every national park. There's one on the summit of Cadillac that tell you that Stephen Mather is credited with laying the foundations for how all the resources in the park would be preserved and maintained, what were the criteria for this, and the plaque for Dorr at Sertimont Springs, called him a scholar, a lover of this park, and again, that same integrity, that really commitment to being sure that these would be preserved unimpaired for future generations. So, thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions or Helen?
So when you separate the bridge.
I didn't. You ought to know by now how skilled I am.
I'm confused. It's all that.
They separated the bridge out. They used those wedges, that vibrating hammer and the fire, whatever you call it, to get it separated. And then they literally moved it on these ball bearings, yeah. And then they got it there, and then the people moved it. The workers moved it. I don't know exactly.
And then they filled the middle in? Or
Excuse me?
then they filled the middle in?
Yes, then they extended the core, yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
So it was authentic on the sides?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, Katrina. Sorry. Phil, go ahead.
So Owen and Dorr and all these people did a great job, of course. They were glad that they did, but I'm wondering if the process of doing this, you thought of things, gosh, if they'd only acquired that land, or if they hadn't, called it Lafayette to begin with, or something, it would have been so much better. Maybe if they'd done something that was a serious mistake, if you could have gone back and changed it. Did any of those things come up? Or,
Well, I think they did a good job myself.
yeah.
But, they gathered the land very haphazardly. Oh, I shouldn't say, it wasn't haphazardly. They gathered it as they could get it, as it was donated, or they got money to buy it, and people were willing to sell it. But it was a piece here, a piece there, a piece somewhere else. You look at the loop road, they built that section from Eagle Lake down to Jordan Pond House. It was in the late 40s or so, in the 40s, before they went and extended it down to Hardin Farm Road. And until they couldn't bring it, they brought it down past the Great Meadow, Sertimont, the Beaver Dam Pond, but it stopped there because Mrs. Potter Palmer owned the land on the west side, and she would not sell or donate it. And finally, towards the end of the 50s, she did. And that allowed them then to bring the road from the Beaver Dam Pond all the way down up the Champlain Overlook to Precious parking lot and out to the meeting up with the section that was right by the feed station then. So, they had a road that went out from the Beaver Dam Pond over land that is now owned by the Jackson Lab that would tie up to the Schooner Head Road. So you could go do this, but wasn't the same kind of loop that we're thinking of.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with a wonderful pictorial article in the September 1948 issue of Life magazine that includes 7 or 8 black and white photographs taken after the fire. Have you seen them?
I think I have, but I'm not positive. I've seen some, I don't know if they're the same ones you're referring to.
What were then referred to as modern dancers, dancing in costumes amid the fire torn ruins of the satellite dancing with the sand beach down.
Yeah, it was right.
Amazing.
Yeah, you can see the ruins if you park in the parking lot for Great Head, and you start walking down towards the trails, you can see ruins off to your right.
People were depicted as dancing wild ways among the burned ruins of the Saddle Mansion. The
Okay.
sand beaches down below it. It was 1948. It's a wonderful collection of black and white photographs.
I'll have to look, maybe the, Jessup has them, I don't know, maybe this library has. I'll
All
look.
libraries have art.
Mhm.
Life magazine in particular, so.
Okay, thank you. Christine, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just checking the chat. Oh, someone in the chat had asked, what was the role of Mrs. Rockefeller and in the carriage roads?
None. She apparently, there's no, I mean, Beatrice Barron, who would take no money for this, met with, Rockefeller, would look at vistas and come up with ways of framing vistas. In the last maybe 10 years or so, the park has restored some of those vistas. But there's no indication in anything I've read that Mrs. Rockefeller played a role. So she may have, quietly and suggested this or that, but I don't know what it is.
And I had a question too. I keep going back to the photograph of the Duck Brook Bridge that looks out to the Atlantic Ocean. And it's just astonishing how little vegetation, there's no vegetation visible. I was wondering if that's after the fire? Because,
It was after the fire,
okay,
The bridge wasn't built in 1953.
right? So it was after the fire. So,
yeah. And that's looking kind of northeast, like towards Frenchman Bay, right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What was the first bridge built?
The first bridge built, that was a cobblestone bridge down at, a little Long Pond.
The carriage has always had the current route, or did they wind up having to, as the park, the acquired parcels and so forth? Did they wind up having to basically sort of restitch together?
I didn't, there's a really good book by, Anne Rockefeller Roberts on, the carriage road, and the bridges. And, as Joe kept acquiring land, getting permission to use other land as he expanded, but the idea was to make this a loop or a series of ways that you could go from point A to point B to point C. But she has a really good treatment of that in her book.
Because there's a couple what look to me, uneducated, like abandoned parts of carriage paths, particularly down the south side of the island, south of Jordan Pond. And I'm kind of wondering what the carriage road system used to look like.
They only built the carriage roads on the east side of the island. They didn't, I mean, he started originally in Seal Harbor on land he owned, Bar Hill and a little Long Pond, and then got permission to go across it and so gradually extended it, but there was opposition to this. I mean, not everyone was happy about this, so it wasn't just you could go and do it, one of the things he said about the Stanley Brook Bridge, well, I own the land on both sides of the road, so nobody can tell me I can't do it, building that bridge, but.
I understand that a few of the places possibly that the gentleman was referring to, there are several places on the carriage roads that I've witnessed, and I'm sure other people have seen them, that are the remnants of roads that were access roads for some of the small granite quarries.
That's right.
Stone for bridges.
Yeah.
Those were later abandoned, so some of them do appear, they may have been carriage roads, but in many cases they dead end.
Yeah, they were, some of that, a lot of that was quarried, and I'm more familiar with the ones going out of Duck Brook, the quarries that are off that way, but there are others. Christina?
Were the tribes still using the island in any ways?
Or what?
At that time, the tribes, they have enough of people, did they have any say in how the park was built, or were they by then just completely? Okay.
There isn't any documentation. I had a long talk with Becky Colwell. she's Chief of Resource and Cultural Management at Acadia, and she's an archaeologist. All of this land was Wabanaki homeland, but when a lot of this was happening, they were not as much they were not much in the interior part. You can't say, there are some people who have said that these initial paths were really Wabanaki trails, but there's no documentation of that. And if Becky doesn't know if there's any documentation, then, she's the one who told me there was none. That, probably, yes, but you can't say that. You can't say in a book that this is what they did because you have no way of knowing that. But it was their homeland. They did come here. There are middens in various places. And there are some older photos going back pretty much before a lot of what's in this book is of their campsites in Bar Harbor, one at the end of Bridge Street, and another one, I think it would be the athletic fields, but I don't know. Well, thank you all very much. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. And if anyone wants books, I think Erica has some.